Good evening. My name is Finley Smith, and I'm a student representative for Tulane University Center for Public Service. I'd like to thank you all for joining us in New Orleans this evening and welcome you all to Voices of New Orleans. From the beginning, this panel has been a collaborative effort. It has been the work of several individuals coming together in an effort to take one of the largest events of natural disasters in the history of humankind and make it into an event that is both comprehensible and understandable. This would not have happened without the work of many universities and their students who were willing and concerned and interested in helping New Orleans and also coming to the city in order to view this panel. Nor would this have happened without the work of all the planners and contributors. We'd like to put out a special thanks to the Corporation for Community Services Learn and Serve America program, Tulane University Center for Public Service, and the Haas Center for Public Service at Stanford University. Yes. Our hope is that this panel discussion will increase the understanding of both Hurricane Katrina and the city of New Orleans. Oftentimes, when looked at from the outside, major disasters can seem very overwhelming and difficult to understand. Indeed, even for those who experience them firsthand, the experience can be very intense and overwhelming. But by listening to personal experiences, these events can be understood on a more personal, human scale, making them more easy to understand and comprehend. Our panelists this evening run the gamut of perspectives, and each has their own area of expertise and their own story to tell. We have with us Brian Dubler, formerly of St. Bernard's Parish, an electrical contractor who participated in disaster relief in the immediate aftermath of the storm. We also have Christy Malbrew, who is a student at Dillard University and the reigning Miss Dillard University. We also have, her name is marked as Emily, but is actually Erin Birchie, and she is a former Peace Corps volunteer and a graduate student at Tulane University's Graduate School of Public Health. We also have Jay Alcazar, who is a Loyola University student and chair of Loyola University's Community Action Program. And we also have, unfortunately wasn't able to join us, but he may come later, John Boudier, who is a native New Orleanian and accomplished musician, so if he walks in later and joins the panel, you will know who he is. And finally, we have Kevin Lander, who is a Tulane University student and one of the 4 founders of the NOLA Hurricane Fund, a nonprofit organization that has raised over $100,000. We'd like to thank all of these panelists for generously donating their time and speaking with us. We'd also like to thank all of you who are in town helping us rebuild the city. It is a great and wonderful experience that you are able to directly be involved in the rebuilding of a major city. However, we'd like to remind you that we really appreciate your continued support even as you return home. For just as this panel has been a collaboration, so too must be the rebuilding of New Orleans. It is our hope that as you listen to these stories, you will gain a deeper understanding of the effects and aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and see not only loss, but also lessons and hope. Thank you.
Good evening. It's great to see all of you here tonight. My name is Jamie Schmill. I'm one of the program coordinators with Tulane Center for Public Service, and I will serve as the moderator for this evening's discussion. So to get started, if all of you could briefly tell us about your evacuation experience and the immediate aftermath. I know it's difficult to put that whole experience into one short synopsis, but just to open things up, if you could tell us briefly about that experience. Whoever would like to start.
On August 27th, that was the Saturday before Katrina hit. That was also freshman move-in day, and my sister's a freshman. My whole family was down here to help her move in. You know, the whole hoopla and all that's going on. And I'm a resident advisor on campus, so I was helping people move in and getting students checked in. They're, you know, trying to make their shopping runs to Target to get all their supplies and all this. And we quickly learned that we were going to have to move in everyone and move them out on the same day because move-in day became evacuation day. So at 1 o'clock on Saturday, they announced that the university would be closed by 6 p.m. and everyone needed to get out. So I stuck around and helped people kind of finalize their plans and get everyone checked out. And after evacuating last year for Hurricane Ivan, I knew that going to the airport was going to be fruitless. Any flights would be packed, so my family and I crammed in our car and we joined the mass exodus to Houston, drove all night to get to Houston, and then flew out the next day. And then that next Monday is when Katrina hit early in the morning, about 4 or 5 in the morning. And seeing, just as all of you saw, the videos and images coming out, for me it was really something that struck my heart. I've been a volunteer in this city for the past 2 years, and working with kids especially was really hard to think about the possibility that they wouldn't have gotten a chance to get out of the city. So in the week after Katrina, 3 friends and I started this nonprofit organization, and we really wanted to channel student support from around the nation. We knew that a lot of times young people are marginalized and it's left to the adults to solve the problems, and we thought that we could help kind of channel those efforts. And through college students doing fundraisers nationwide and countless volunteers and donors, we've enjoyed some success thus far in adopting families, helping them get furniture, school supplies, that sort of thing. We gave money to Tulane students who were running ambulance calls. They stayed in, there was a disaster team who stayed in Baton Rouge and did triage and transported students everywhere. I came down and met with them. And then now we're focusing on rebuilding the education system in schools. So.
My evacuation experience. I came back to the city about a week before Katrina after spending a summer in Peru doing public health research. I had been living here for about a year and was in major disbelief. We had evacuated for Ivan as well, and I just thought, no way, I'm not leaving again. It's a false alarm. But they started to have some serious doomsday scenarios on the news, and I thought, I guess we better leave. So early Sunday morning, I hit the freeway, and it was jam-packed. And we started to hear that there was going to be a mandatory evacuation, and it was really serious. And so, again, we joined the mass exodus, but we only made it to Lafayette, which is normally about a 2-hour trip. It took us 12 hours to get there. And I stayed in a hostel with some friends, and we just sort of watched the news and couldn't believe our eyes. A few weeks after that, I was back home in Arizona with my family trying to decide what I would do, and decided that coming back it wasn't a question. It had to happen. It was just a matter of how and with what organization. And so fortunately, a professor of mine was on the ground here doing disaster work and invited students to come back and help her with that project. And so I returned. I also had my home in the Bywater, which lost its roof and had significant damage. And so I had to return to recover my belongings and sort of get resituated. So that was my experience.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a student at Dillard University, and I first learned that we had been in school for about a week before the hurricane hit, and that Saturday, someone knocked on our doors early in the morning on campus and told us that we needed to evacuate the university by 1 o'clock. So initially, like many other people, I didn't think that it was going to be such a serious storm, so I just packed a few items and jumped in the car. And I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, so I went to the gas station and waited in a long line to fill my car up and start to make my travels to Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge is about an hour away from here, but it took 5 hours for me to get there because of all the traffic. Initially, after the storm hit, when we woke up the next morning in our home, we didn't have any power or any electricity, so we couldn't see the images or watch the news on TV, but we had radios, and so I was just lost for words at what I heard on the radio about all the flooding in the city, people still being here. So I enrolled in classes at Southern University in Baton Rouge about maybe a week after the storm, and I tried to find as many other students from Dillard as well as New Orleans that were there. And we started a club, and we built a network so that we could relay information with each other throughout that time. And also we did a lot of volunteering with the American Red Cross. We tried to raise money to donate to St. Jude Children's Hospital because a lot of the patients from New Orleans were brought to that hospital. And here I lived in an apartment, a first-floor apartment, and my whole apartment flooded, so I lost everything that I left behind. And now we're back at Dillard. Unfortunately, we couldn't return to our campus, but we're having classes at the Hilton Hotel, and that's also where we're living for now.
Again, my name is Jay Alcazar. I'm I guess now I got promoted. I'm the chairperson for the Loyola University Community Action Program. Before Hurricane Katrina, what I was worried about that August was, oh my gosh, I want to get these new freshmen involved in community service and social justice activities. And I planned a bunch of stuff, and then I forgot that I had a wedding to go to. So when I found out that Hurricane Katrina was a big deal, I was at a wedding that was taking place on a Carnival cruise ship, the Sensation, and it had to leave the port of New Orleans an hour early because there was a big hurricane coming, and I didn't even know a hurricane was coming because I just wasn't paying attention to that kind of stuff. So when I got back from the wedding, I called my friends that had also coordinated the activities for the freshmen, and most of those activities had been canceled because of the hurricane. So again, it's a big deal. But my family were Filipinos, and hurricanes and stuff like that happened all the time over there. And my father would just, like, whenever there was a hurricane and a big flood, he'd just, like, tie a boat to a banana tree, and when the water would come up and the island would disappear, he'd just, like, hang on to that. And then the water would come down, so he's like, hurricane, no big deal. And so we pretty much stayed in town for every hurricane. But for this one, it felt different because I was watching the news, and all the weather people were saying, this is the perfect storm. This is a textbook example. And all my friends were instant messaging me, telling me that what the hell was I doing here? I had to get out, and I was trying to explain. But I managed to convince my family that we had to go. So we evacuated to Baton Rouge, and again, it took like 7 hours to get there. And everyone in my family was really sad that we left because we felt like we gave up on our house. And I guess I felt like it was my fault because I was the one that had convinced everyone to leave. But then we listened to the radio, we watched TV, and we heard that the levees had broken. And I lived in Lakeview, which is very close to the 17th Street Canal, and the levee broke in our neighborhood, and it just kind of sunk in that we were going to be in Baton Rouge for a very long time. And so the couple that got married on the Carnival cruise ship, I stayed with them for an entire semester while I went to LSU. Yeah, pretty much. I didn't think it was going to have like that big of an impact. But anyway, I'm back at Loyola now and working with the students there and trying to get our school committed to the recovery has been a really cathartic thing for me, so I'm glad that I'm involved with that.
I'm Brian. I was in Pascagoula Saturday and then drove back to New Orleans. We had a few jobs going on around the city. I was lucky as far as traffic. I didn't leave until 4:30 in the morning. I think it was Sunday morning. I actually made it up to Houston for like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the evening. But I didn't go interstate. I went all the back way, you know. But got my daughter up there to Houston. Actually, she went with a friend of mine, a couple that bugged out. She grew up with their daughter. So she stood with them in the hotel because once we got there, we got turned around and sent back to New Orleans. And I was contracted through United States Environmental Services. So once we found our way to the St. Claude Bridge, we were launching boats on the St. Claude Bridge, going towards the lower 9th Ward in St. Bernard Parish, rescues, and we commandeered a few necessary pieces of equipment to get some fuel to the pumping stations in St. Bernard Parish, which eventually pumped as much once they stopped the levee break, or temporarily repaired it, we were able to pump all the water out, which the pumping station in St. Bernard Parish apparently was the only pumping station from St. Claude Bridge all the way down to what we call the end of the world. But anyway, I had a pretty decently successful business, and lost everything. I had 3.5 foot of water over my roof, and my daughter and I live in a bywater now, and she's going to school back in St. Bernard Parish, and back to business.
How have your roles in the community changed since the storm, and the goals that you see for yourself and your community changed?
Do you want to just go down the line again?
Just absolutely, jump in.
I think one of the main things is, as I said, our organization is focusing on public education, and it's been widely reported that there were a lot of problems in this city before Katrina. Something like 77% of 8th graders failed math and English on statewide tests pre-Katrina. And the public schools had just undergone an internal audit where they couldn't find $71 million. And in a lot of ways, Katrina was the medium for creating a blank slate for public education, and I think that that's really one of the focuses of the Mayor's Bring New Orleans Back Commission and a lot of community organizations is looking at how are we going to make sure that some of the problems and systemic issues of the past are not going to return now that we've been given the opportunity to really make some drastic changes. So.
At the School of Public Health, one of the largest departments is the International Health Department, which I'm in. And we pay a lot of money to build sort of an international public health career, and we spend a lot of time abroad. And with Katrina, we have now been faced with a massive natural disaster in our backyard. So many School of Public Health students, myself included, are here doing work that we would normally be doing in developing countries, and the scenario here is very similar. So the work I've done here is comparable to anything I would have done abroad. In terms of the goals, we have created a School of Public Health agency, organization that can really fulfill some of what the president was talking about in terms of reaching out to our local community and helping rebuild. And so we're fulfilling that promise, and it's inspiring to see our students really get involved in our local community.
Well, at Dillard, we've always been engaged in numerous community service activities, but this time after Hurricane Katrina, we're asking for help with community service activities, and a lot of the projects that we're working on projects to help ourselves as well as the New Orleans community. We've worked with going out houses, neighborhood cleanups, community cleanups, but also more than cleanup projects, we've been working on helping in the education system with tutoring and mentoring programs, because a lot of the students that return to New Orleans don't have as many of the resources as they previously had, but they still have to take important tests, LEAP tests. High schoolers have to take tests to get their high school diplomas, so we've really been trying to reach out in that community as well. But it's just ironic that we've been doing projects, like I've been engaged in projects since freshman year, helping other people, even hurricane relief drives, but now it's more close to home.
In terms of my role, like as a leader at Loyola for the Community Action Program, where we centralize all the community service and advocacy and social justice activities, I was doing stuff like that before the hurricane, but now all of a sudden it's a lot more important than it's ever been, and I'm finding myself having to speak on behalf of my community, to look for funding all over the place, and I just have to be so much more outspoken than usual. We the university and our program need to be a lot more dynamic in looking for areas that need our assistance, where volunteers are needed, and working out the logistics of that has been kind of a nightmare, but it's also been a real interesting challenge.
My work's changed a lot. Went from a lot of lighting design to just rebuilding electrical services and getting people electricity back. I had a contract with a company out of California. We were renovating repos, HUD houses, bank foreclosures, and it was a really big contract. Made a lot of money with them, but it's like I can't even take their work right now because I lost all the people that worked for me except for one. Had crews scattered from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to Pascagoula, Moss Point, and there's no time to work with kids anymore. I used to coach sports. Of course, most of the parks are trailer parks now anyway, so it's not like you have ballparks everywhere. But that's it. I downsized my business, and I'm not doing what I used to do. I did electrical, but I was pretty much didn't have my hands on the tools. I had other people doing the work for me. Now I have my hands on the tools, and just watching time go by.
What changes have you seen since you've been back in the city? Are things by and large getting better? What have your impressions been of the progress of the city in the last 7 months?
I would say that there have been drastic improvements. I don't know if where you guys have been out volunteering or driving around, but every week new stoplights work in areas of the city. That's actually kind of an interesting game to kind of get up to an area that used to be a great intersection of 8 lanes and trying to weave your way across with no stoplights, and that continues to improve. And it really depends on the area. I mean, if anyone, areas of Lakeview, as Jay was saying, and in the 9th Ward and parts of St. Bernard are still very much, I mean, there are still homes that have not been touched since Katrina. Now, there are also areas that have undergone a lot more. There's people actively working, rebuilding. People are coming back. The city's population is continually growing. They came out with a new figure this weekend that the city's up to an estimated 200,000 people now. Pre-Katrina, it was 462,000. So people continue to be coming back, but there still are certain areas, neighborhoods, and certainly definitely a lot of services that are just not in the city like they were before. I don't know if anyone's tried to go out to eat late at night, but that can be quite a challenge, which you certainly would not have found pre-Katrina.
Yeah, I work at a project in Treme, which is a historic neighborhood in New Orleans near the French Quarter. And half of it's flooded severely and the other half didn't. And it's been interesting to watch the repopulation of the half that didn't. Many of the residents are now coming back and filling out the neighborhood a bit. And then the other half is frozen in time. It really hasn't changed much. So it continues to look much like it did when I came back in October. But the city itself, by and large, seems to, I mean, it's changed a lot. When we got back in October, there were still National Guardsmen on the ground, and it was a ghost town. So, yeah, it's been...
No electricity.
Right, no electricity. It's changed a lot. So.
As far as the changes, as both my colleagues said, it really depends on where you are. Some portions of the city, things seem to be close to normal. Then in other parts, you can see the huge amount of devastation. And as Kevin said, you really have to be prepared. If you want to go out somewhere, you may want to call before and make sure the place is open. And then even if you know that the business is open, you might want to make sure that they're open for normal business hours. So there's a lot of extra preparation and extra planning. You can't just go out and spur of the moment like you could before.
I pretty much agree with everything that's been said. It does depend, and why does it depend? It depends on geography, depends on socioeconomic status, depends upon race. Where I see a significant change is attitude of the city, and I mean a change in attitude is not going to make you any less hungry or any less homeless than you are. But I mean, I think it's really interesting to see people questioning the role of government, the role of private corporations in our daily activities. People are starting to see that things matter, and being apathetic pretty much gets you nowhere. And so that's a change that I appreciate, and I mean, if it takes a hurricane to get you there, well, whatever.
I notice the lights I stop at and you look up and they're green. You're so used to seeing a stop sign there.
Yeah, you used to stop. I'll be stopped at greens now.
Right. You know, somebody blows horn.
There's a
You
light
look up,
here.
it's like, oh man, I'm sorry. You know, brain fart. Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen it from total devastation to where it is now. And I live in a Bywater. Bywater's a great little neighborhood, but it's interesting to see that the little corner grocery stores that you went to either before Katrina or right after Katrina that didn't get tore up from the looters, now they're actually starting to stock items as per the neighborhood request. Like we need some more candles. Every Tuesday the lights go out. Or every time it rains the lights go out. And in fact, I was there one day and I heard this guy that owns the store yelling at his wife because one of the customers wanted Fruit Loops, and she never did go to the store and pick up Fruit Loops. So, but yeah, it's interesting to see. Like they said, geographically, the Bywater's in good shape. A lot of people are making repairs, mostly roof repairs, and in the sections that went underwater close to the St. Claude, obviously, there's a lot more construction going on there. But I was doing some work in Gentile the other day, and it's
nothing going on.
It's street by street. Like one street, Music Street, boom, you got 40, 50 people back. Right. They're in their trailers, they're working on their houses, and then you go to the next block over and nobody's there, And obviously the lower Ninth Ward, I don't think they have enough power to run trailers yet. So
or water. Yeah.
That's going to be real slow coming back. But it's the attitude of people has definitely changed. Like I said last time at the last panel, you notice people saying hello a little bit more, people that you don't know, rather than just, I've seen people actually pull over and help people get stuff out their trunk, unload trucks or whatever. And I guess the free flow of alcohol has changed a lot of things too, because in certain areas I notice people are having parties and inviting everybody in the neighborhood just to come over and party, kind of like keep people out in the middle of the street. So that's from being 14 foot underwater to where it is now. I've seen all kind of progress, but it doesn't seem like it's 7 months. It only feels like it's only been a couple of months, and then if you look back in 7 months, really don't see much.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
There is a real resilience, though. I see, like you said, there's people doing a lot of construction, doing a lot of repairs, saying, it doesn't matter. I had 14 feet of water, but I'm coming back. There was no question. Right. And people helping each other out.
I've only gutted 2 rooms in my house.
Right.
I haven't had time to really do anything. I'm working on everybody else's house, but I'm so happy where I'm at in the Bywater right now. I'm not really in a rush. I'm paying rent and mortgage, but so I really need to get on a ball. But I mean, it's like my neighbors were real tickled to death to see me show up. Yeah. And hey man, you coming back? I'm like, I'm gonna rent it out, I guess. But it's good. My daughters, some of her friends are back in the neighborhood, but it, shuffled out. A lot of them have moved on. So, yeah.
What should people from elsewhere know about the state of the city that the national press isn't covering or isn't covering properly?
Are they covering something properly?
I think we found in our last panel that there was an interesting disconnect between the media saturation that the students coming in had versus what people who are living here and actively rebuilding have had. So what has your experience been? Is it a frustrating process to watch this very personal experience covered from afar, or do you feel like it is an accurate representation of what's been going on? Are there any...
I think it's really hard because I think that the media keeps focusing on these bills that get passed, money that gets allocated, and everyone that I talk to, even in local government, there were some congressmen down here last week that I met with, and they were just saying, in our parish is St. Bernard, in New Orleans, we're not seeing any of that money. We don't know where it goes, where it got appropriated, but it's not trickling down, and so everyone seems to be. All the finger pointing between state, local, and federal government, everyone's saying it's someone else's job, ends up being reported as things are being done, or this person's giving a speech and has advocated for this, and really it's just kind of the rebuilding I see is really being funneled by individual efforts. That's been my experience.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you said, the press, or when a little bit of TV I do see, and they start talking about where this money's going to go in St. Bernard Parish, they're not picking trash up right now because they say they have it worked out. Whatever it worked out means, I don't know, but that's kind of bad when you see that people are going in and they got their houses throwing it out front. You got somebody living in a trailer, No. And I don't think they're covering that kind of stuff. And then it's funny, like when Bush comes down one day, he was right there in the lower Ninth Ward. I was bringing my daughter to school, and they had state troopers and military all over the place protecting him and holding traffic up. And I was able to go all the way around and end up in St. Bernard Parish. They don't know the neighborhood too well. But they kind of looked at me when I came out on one side of them. Where you came from? The hood, man. But yeah, I don't see anything, in reference to how long it takes to go somewhere. You have to almost go to Metairie for just about everything. Like we talked about last time. Saver Center's open down at the end of Franklin. That's cool. But you don't see the little things that matter. You don't see them covering, and you don't see anything as far as like the schools, school system. They'll talk about it a little bit, and boom, they'll just touch base. Like New Orleans is, Nagin might have been seeking funds for this, that, and the other, but you don't see anything as far as them actually coming down here and showing that the new schools are opening up and how many kids are going to the new schools. You don't see anything about this. I think, I saw one thing on TV about y'all going to school at the hotel. That's about all I saw. And that was when I was out of town. And that was, y'all started going to school a little while back at the hotel. And this was just last week. I saw it up in North Carolina. So I don't think they really doing a good job covering. The big problem is they don't watch enough of the local news, I guess. Because the local news covers it, and they're not watching local news. They come down here, and they think they know where to go and what to shoot.
Yeah. The other thing is they set up in the French Quarter. If you watch CNN during Mardi Gras, everyone's down in the French Quarter going, hey, things seem to be coming back, and everything's back to normal. Well, no one ever says the French Quarter didn't even flood. I mean, right. That's not the issue. If you go down there, there might be some hours that are different than pre-Katrina, but everything else is pretty much the same. It's the other areas that really need to be covered.
I went to the St. Patrick's Parade or whatever in St. Bernard Parish for about 10 minutes because I realized I'm not picking that cabbage up and taking it home with me this time. If it hits the ground, it can stay there. We used to pull some leaves off and cook it. But went back up to the one in the city, But they got watermelons growing out there. God knows where they came from.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize what a terrible knot of indecision we still live in here. There's still so many crucial decisions to be made, and we don't know what's happening. We have an election coming up soon. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of questions still to be answered. And so they get on CNN and say, well, everything's fine, and we've allocated this money, but it's sitting there in I don't know where. And so many questions are still yet to be answered. So.
I have a question, I guess, for the audience and the rest of the people on the panel. Do you think that the coverage is predominantly on the Ninth Ward? Is that the perception that everyone has?
Yes. Heads.
I think yeah.
Is it yeah?
Hands. Yes.
Well,
yeah.
I mean,
that and the people out of town voting. I mean, man, I'm sorry, we're here. Let us vote. Right.
Well,
and if you want to vote, it's voting. Everybody. I mean. You know where to vote. Go vote.
While I commend the media's coverage of like the most disadvantaged people in New Orleans, I think that what we're missing out on is the big picture. That like, while a very poor neighborhood got hurt, like there are other neighborhoods like Lakeview and St. Bernard Parish. I mean that's not a neighborhood, but like other areas that need a lot of help as well. And if they only focus on the Ninth Ward, what it makes it look like is, well, this isn't true at all. What it makes it look like is that the people of New Orleans are looking for some kind of handout. And I think it makes it easier for a lot of people to just dismiss the needs that our city has because people might harbor some feelings against, disadvantaged people. The city doesn't have very much of a plan to bring back black people. The Bring Back New Orleans Commission plans on making New Orleans at least a compact, business like oriented type area, which it already is. It does not need to do any more work to make it that. So in terms of bringing black people back, I don't think we're doing so hot on that.
I don't disagree, but I don't think it's bringing black people back is the problem. I think we need to bring homeowners, white, black, yellow, brown, purple, yellow, green, green and blue, homeowners. Homeowners. They did have white people that lived in the lower Ninth Ward, you know. And yes, because it was an area that was probably 99.8% black, homeowners. If you didn't own a home there and you were renting, well, guess what? You lost everything. Hopefully you're somewhere else working right now. And if you want to come back to New Orleans, come back and come to work, you know. And that's where I disagree. I think I hear a lot of not wanting to or not doing enough to bring black people back. A lot of black people in my neighborhood that came back, you know, because they wanted to. And I'm thinking it's, like you said, geographically it was a poor neighborhood. Some due to disadvantage, some by choice. And I think we all know this. There were people in that neighborhood, just like in any other neighborhood, that didn't want to work. And so I don't think it's a color issue. I really frown when I hear people say that, because I think anybody that lived in that neighborhood that wanted to come back probably did, because I see them working on their houses. And if they say they can't come back, I'd love to see an individual list of reasons why, you know. But I really think it's not bring black people back. I think it's bring New Orleans back. Yeah, hopefully we get enough black people to come back. That way we keep the soul to New Orleans and it doesn't end up, you know, something that it hasn't been. But I mean, if God wanted a chocolate city, he would have had a chocolate city. If God doesn't want a chocolate city, he won't have a chocolate city, you know?
You're right. I don't think we should talk about what God wants. And it's true that socioeconomic status is a much better determinant of, you know, your social situation as opposed to race. But like in New Orleans, in New Orleans and in a lot of like other urban areas, 60% of people that live there are going to be renters. And because of the way the GI Bill worked out, black people were not allowed to be homeowners. So you've got a lot of black renters. And so maybe I was making a sweeping generalization when I said that there are a lot of black renters, but that's true, that is a situation. And if we don't make some kind of priority to get them back, then we're missing out on a big chunk of our city. A lot of the working class. That's why like minimum wage jobs like Burger King and Wendy's and all those other places have to up their pay points to like $10 an hour, because a lot of the people that were working those jobs are now gone. And that's one reason why everything closes so early and nothing's open when we want it to, because New Orleans was dependent upon that population. So if we want to function better, I really do think we need to prioritize getting those people back.
I agree to that. One of the contracts I had, I can't take the contract anymore because it was everything that was priced out was priced according to
Pre-Katrina?
Pre-Katrina was the insurance companies will only pay so much. Right. You know, they only allowed what they call a minimum standard for carpet, for the paint. You know, it was $1.26. You can't go buy sheetrock for $1.26 a square foot anymore. You know, so it's like, yeah, sorry guys, you know, send your crews from up north down here and let them work on your jobs. I got other things going on. But that's the thing. You know, I think we need our workforce back. Of course, where are you going to put them?
Yeah, I was just going to say the main problem is housing.
Right.
I mean, you have a lot of people who are saying, I can't come back because I don't have anywhere to live.
That all stems down to the trailers. Get them hooked up. I know people that have trailers
and they don't have the
key
keys
to it.
They don't have the keys. FEMA,
electricity's hooked up to it and everything. They need to send an inspector out.
I don't know. This actually has been widely reported. There's like 15,000 trailers sitting in Arkansas right now that they just don't have anywhere to put them. And then even in neighborhoods right now where FEMA has put in the trailers, a lot of them are sitting on the lots, but they haven't given the owners the key yet because they don't have electricity or sewage. So I was talking to someone from Lakeview the other day. They were saying, I'm back in Lakeview, but I would say in a mile radius where I live, there were 4 people who were living there. And there are a lot of people with trailers, but no one's in them. They don't even have the keys yet. So housing is probably the main issue. And all these questions about workers and people coming back to the city, it's all a chicken and the egg paradox where you've got no one's going to come back without jobs. Well, there's not going to be jobs without people who come back, and no one's going to come back without housing. Well, if there's not education, then no one's going to come back because they can't have their kids here. So everything is very circular, and it's a major, major issue.
Right. It's like get the trailers here for the homeowners to come back so they can work on their houses, you know. And if they're in a trade industry, boom, they've got work. Their neighborhood, you know. I mean, it's like I've got 15 jobs in St. Bernard Parish right now from just people. Yeah, they just know me. They pass by and leaving notes on my door at my house. Sometimes I go to my house just to get the notes off my door because they know where I live at, you know.
Yeah.
They see the van I left behind still on my front lawn,
Right.
you know. But it's like, you know, the people that are fixing their places up are the ones that found a trailer or got it or bought it there themselves or they're driving across from Slidell, you know. Get the poor people a trailer and put it in front of their house, get their power to it, get the sewage hooked up. And if it's an old lady that doesn't work, then at least she can get a house. But she's going to need to spend her money.
Yep.
She'll need to spend that monthly check somewhere, so get her back in the house, you know. And if it's the old lady who lives with the son who's got a job, bring him back. Let him go to work. But you got to have a place to live.
I think that it's true. I think that one of the really unfortunate ways that FEMA has decided to operate is by just providing no-bid contracts to companies. Like, the people couldn't bid on the lowest price. They just kind of handed out contracts. And the way it's been working is people haven't been getting their trailers or been getting their keys or getting anything hooked up is because it goes from the hands of one company to the hands of another company to the hands of another company before it ever gets to the person. There's all these middle men that are getting in the way of people, you know, to move back in.
Yeah, we figured the process out. You got one guy that delivers the trailer. The next day, the guy shows up with the steps, an electrical pole. You know, you see him riding around the city with trailers with temporary poles, stacked up caboodles of them. And then the following day, the plumber comes, and then everything's done, like within a week. Then the inspector has to come around. You know, that takes 2 weeks for somebody that drives around a dually pickup truck with a tape measure, you know, and the spray paint.
Yeah, is that an efficient way? I don't think so. Not in this situation.
What has the government, both local and federal, been doing to help, and is it enough? What should they be doing? Any ideas?
I know that in St. Bernard Parish there's a really interesting community called Emergency Communities. It's like this big tent city that focuses on providing food and services to residents of St. Bernard Parish that want to come back and rebuild their homes, and they feed about 1,500 people a day with hot meals, and it's really great. I volunteered there many, many times, and I really like it there. St. Bernard Parish is providing them with like porta potties for the bathrooms, giving them power, giving them financial support so that like basically a bunch of hippies can feed everybody. It's really one of the coolest things I've ever seen, and that is an instance.
Been known to happen before.
It happens quite a lot that the hippies come and save the day.
Yeah.
I donated $100 to him when I was there, and I was looking at this guy, and it's like my laptop's in a truck. You know, you can pick up a signal somewhere, and the guy said, "Oh, we don't have our phones and our laptops. Some little radio we had hooked up wasn't working." He says, "You know, it's like $400 repaired." And I was like, "Here's $100. See ya. You know, hope you get the other $3." But yeah, they doing. That's the different. You know, St. Bernard got overlooked a lot. Yeah. But they still hanging in there and pulling it together. Whereas New Orleans, I see New Orleans, it's a lot more of, you know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If only Common Ground, which is New Orleans based, could get the same kind of support that St. Bernard Parish has gotten, I think it would be a really great thing for the city.
The disadvantage to that, just to bounce off of you, is the sustainability factor. So we have this influx of amazing volunteers from all over the country camping out in New Orleans to help out. But what happens when it gets really hot in the summer in this city and they're living in their tent trying to serve folks? I mean, I'm concerned about the sustainability of those organizations.
Yeah, and I mean, my problem, I support the efforts of Common Ground and where their heart's at, but part of the issue with them dismissing all the regulations and saying we're not going to go through any normal channels, well, eventually those normal channels are going to take precedent. And I understand that in response to Katrina, it was pretty much kind of a free-for-all of, look, no one's giving out water, well, we're going to give out water. No one's going to give out medical care, we're going to give out medical care. But they didn't have anyone who was capable of doing that, but they just did it anyway. But But eventually, some of those rules are going to come down and say, we can't rebuild these neighborhoods where you're gutting homes. It's just not going to be rebuilt. And those efforts are going to need to be channeled elsewhere. So I applaud the efforts of Common Ground and other works by, pulling themselves up by the bootstraps. That's commendable. But at some point, to dismiss the local government is just going to continue the process of everyone pointing fingers at each other and not allowing things to get done.
I think you're right. It kind of reflects upon what a lot of us at Loyola consider to be the kind of balance between charity and justice, where charity is like, you're helping out, but how sustainable is it? It's not really solving the problem. What you have to do is make some kind of systemic change so that it's sustainable, so that the change you want to make is lasting and happens automatically because it's going to be part of a system. I think one of the unfortunate things with Common Ground is that they've not been able to get the kind of support that they wanted, and sometimes what they end up doing is just try and find other means out of desperation. And it's probably not the best tactic, but they're siding with the disadvantaged, and that's something that I think that's a good side to take.
Yeah, they've helped out people in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Gotten tops on.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know if you were here last week or Monday or whatever. It's like one of the things I was talking about is like FEMA doesn't want to put a tarp on a slate roof. Go figure that. New Orleans, no slate roof. How many houses don't have slate roofs? But that's one. Common Ground was, I think, the only ones going around putting them on. So I mean, man, still got a lot of them that could, use some tops.
Yeah.
But I mean, they help them gutting out. I see them gutting out now. But yeah, I don't know what the heck they're gonna do when the summertime hits around. I mean, people say it's hot in Arizona until you come down here and feel it.
Yeah.
In developing a sustainable rebuilding plan, what do you think the roles of nonprofits and faith-based organizations will be?
I think they're of utmost importance. I think that as everyone has seen, the federal and state and local governments are having big debates, and now local government is more focused on a lot of the election stuff going on right now. So you have a lot of people coming together between different interfaith councils, a lot of nonprofits, students from all over the country coming down. Thank you guys, by the way. That's amazing. And I think that really is going to be part of what brings this community back, is people saying, listen, we're here to help, and that's really our focus. We're not worried about the politics of it. We're not worried about who's helping who's going to get this contract and who's not. We're here to help the people. And I think that a lot of times it can be short-sighted to really try and come up with the best plan and make sure my plan gets put forward first. And especially in education, one of the things is really there's a big debate right now in the city going on between charter schools and public schools, and some of that debate is obviously healthy and necessary, but what can really be lost is we still need to educate our kids, bottom line. That's number one. And I think that can be translated to all the other facets.
I think you're going to see a lot of fundraising for nonprofit charitable organizations that won't be in the metro section in the front,
Right.
Our project in Tremay actually started as a collaboration between Tulane University, Second Harvest, which is an organization that fights hunger throughout the nation, and St. Augustine Church, which is one of the most historic African-American Catholic churches in the States. And so that partnership is really what I see as a model for what we can do throughout the city in terms of these different NGOs and faith-based organizations coming together to serve their individual communities, and it's been really successful thus far. So it's a real opportunity, I think, for this city.
I've seen Catholic Charities do a lot of great things. They're funding a lot of really good projects, like they're funding Acorn even, and they're funding Bucket Brigade, both really, really great organizations. And I think it's a great example of faith in action. And as a Loyola student, I'm proud to see that happen.
Well, I definitely think that right now the nonprofit organizations are very vital, but what's even more so as important is for people to donate money and resources because a lot of these organizations are needed not just to rebuild the city, but to ensure that people have mental awareness, personal wellness, ensuring that there's counseling available, psychiatric services if people need so. So they're definitely important. Grants to fund a lot of the projects that are working on rebuilding is vital right now. So we need time and we need energy, but also a lot of funds donated to these organizations.
That's a great point, because I think a lot of people come down and they think that, oh, the Katrina, is that still an issue or thing? Isn't that taken care of? Like, that was 7 months ago. And while immediate efforts have dropped off, or in terms of fundraising, the rebuilding of this community is going to take place for several years to come. It is a huge project. And while it was great to see the response of people nationwide kind of opening their checkbooks and saying, we want to help out, just like with the tsunami or anything like that, I would say that people have a pretty short memory. I was talking with one of my friends about that the other day, that people have a pretty short memory about a community that's not their own. And it's easy to be somewhere else and just say, oh yeah, things, New Orleans, there was that Katrina thing in August. I think it's really important to keep New Orleans in your thoughts.
I think another thing is a lot of people have been donating a lot of food and a lot of clothing to us, but we need everything, not just the food and not just the clothing donations, even though we are grateful for anything.
Aaron, maybe you could speak to this next question as a student of public health. What are the resources in New Orleans right now for mental health care and for health care in general? Are hospitals up and running? What's the access to health care in the city right now?
That continues to be a major challenge in the city. Recently, Tulane opened their university downtown, but we are facing the closure, I guess, the non-rebuilding of Charity Hospital, which is one of the premier public health hospital in New Orleans. It serves anyone with or without health insurance. And so there was a large rally yesterday to save Charity Hospital, and that will be a huge loss to this city. Common Ground was running a clinic in Algiers for medical care. They're still doing that, and that has been of great service to that area. But medical care is a serious problem in this city. It's difficult to access. It's an ongoing challenge, and it doesn't seem like it will change in the foreseeable future. So, yeah, that's a serious struggle right now.
It's a hot button issue too in this mayoral election. A lot of the debates have been going on because there's a proposal to create a new $10 billion health sciences complex downtown, kind of where LSU and Tulane Medical and the veterans hospitals are, because right now there are very few hospital options. And so that was a big question, even during Mardi Gras, they thought there were going to be a lot of problems with not having enough health care in the city. Mm-hmm. So there were the National Guard set up a temporary health facility, and that actually, it went smoother than expected, but that's certainly going to be a major issue, because there were a lot of healthcare facilities, and the hospital system is now vastly depleted.
That's another issue with bringing people back.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Bring a bunch of people back real quick and see what happens when we don't have the proper health care for them, and then they come back and they get depressed, just like everybody else does when they see their house and see. Yeah.
And what about the state of the schools? It's been briefly touched on thus far. Have children returned? Is the lack of schools keeping families from being able to return? And how important is the public school system to rebuilding New Orleans?
I mean, I think it's of utmost importance. In some of the families that our organization adopted, they were in Dallas and Alabama. In meeting with them, that was kind of one of their number one things was our kids have now been displaced from their schools in New Orleans. They're now in a school system here in Alabama or Dallas where they're getting more personalized attention. They are enjoying their classes. They're getting tutoring. Why would I bring my family back? They were in a system where they weren't getting support, and I had to already move once. Why not just restart here? And you can't blame a parent for thinking that. Right now, the state took over in terms of the public schools in the city. There were 117 public schools pre-Katrina. The state took over the 102 of those in November, chartering the schools as a state charter because of the failing nature of all the public schools in New Orleans. Since then, a few more have been chartered. There are now about 21 schools open in New Orleans Parish, more and more opening all the time. I think that some of the major issues are not necessarily that there aren't access to, I mean, if people come back, they're fitting them in schools, and all the charter schools are open enrollment. Any student who's back in the city can go to any school. I'm working over at a New Orleans High School for Science and Math, and anyone who wants to go can go. But I think some of the major issues are people questioning the quality of the education because it was very much lacking pre-Katrina. So I think bringing back schools stronger than we had before is the key. I know St. Bernard has, I'm pretty sure they have one school open where they built a whole temporary facility in the parking lot of one of the high schools. You might be able to speak.
Yeah, it's a unified school. It's kindergarten through senior.
Yeah.
And the administrators and principals that weren't teaching are teaching now because, you know, they did it without money. They got the school together without the money. But we can't have schools in New Orleans half functional.
Right.
We need a functional schools in New Orleans, you know, for these children to be educated. I mean, there were high schools in New Orleans that valedictorians almost didn't exist.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, that's pathetic. So
the
children have a better opportunity to learn right now.
Certainly. And all that does is that just facilitates the poverty of the city with the poor systems.
Yeah, right. No education, we're not going to go anywhere.
And in terms of the federal government, the St. Bernard system is really interesting in that FEMA said we will only pay for 90% of rebuilding of the damaged school. We'll pay for 100% of temporary facilities, but we'll only pay for 90% if you're going to actually do some reconstruction. Well, now that they've done all this reconstruction in this temporary unified school, they're going to end up having to pay, they paid 100% of that, they're going to have to pay 90% when they eventually rebuild it. So it's a classic struggle. I was speaking with the the superintendent and she was saying, what a stupid system. The federal government's not helping me out. We want to be back in our facility, but they're saying we don't have the funds for it, and they're going to be paying twice. So it's just a real disconnect between what local people want and what the federal government sees as a policy.
That was an issue that came up at the last panel. You know, they spending $60, $70, $80, $100,000 on these trailers. Yeah. They could have just
put that into the school.
Given them, right. But it could have given the trailers to people and say, you hook it up.
Right.
Here's your trailer. And a lot of people would have done it. I mean, it's not that expensive.
Right.
You know, and put money into the school. Man, of all things, you're not going to give enough money to an education system. That should be the first thing.
Right.
Again, one of the unfortunate things is those no-bid contracts. They go right to those middlemen, you know, not straight to the person that you want to help. Something that I noticed when I was volunteering was that I went to volunteer at a park, and there was a community kitchen set up there. And the people that were working the community kitchen said that the government and the private corporations that were there, or that were supposed to clean up the park, didn't want those volunteers to clean up the public bathrooms there, because if they were to clean up the bathrooms, then the company would have lost that contract and would have lost that money they would have made. All the while, there's volunteers and residents that want to use the bathroom in the park, and they can't because somebody wants to make money.
The school system is definitely a struggle. I know for our campus, Dillard University, we haven't even returned to our campus yet. We're back here in the city, but a lot of people don't realize we're still going through a great amount of changes. The London Avenue Canal, which breached, is located on our campus, so all of that water poured into our school, and of course all the first floors of our buildings flooded. So we're staying at the Hilton Hotel and having our classes there, but we lost a lot of faculty members. It's difficult just trying to go to your classrooms. We have a big room at the hotel is similar to a ballroom, and we have about maybe 20 cubicles inside that room, and that's where our classes are held. Our offices for our teachers are down the street, down Poitras, across from the Superdome, so you can't just go upstairs or across the campus to see your professor. You have to get on the shuttle, or you have to drive down the street and then deal with parking. Some of the offices don't have telephones right now, so you have to, do what you can to call or use the email system a lot. And we need a lot more money for our school. we lost 3 of our housing facilities for the students right now. So even when we're able to return on campus, we're still trying to strategize of how we're going to house our students. Our enrollment before the storm was about 2,300 students, and we had 1,100 that returned right now. So we're still dealing with issues of dislocation, and we're hoping to return back in August, but we still are working on the housing and everything for our school. So we definitely need a lot of help from the government.
Before we open for questions from the audience, I have one final question for our panelists. We hear a lot about New Orleans culture, but as locals we know it's far from monolithic. How has New Orleans culture been affected, and is it coming back? Will it return in a way that's similar to what it was before the storm? Is that possible? What's your cultural forecast for the city?
The city burned years ago, and it came back. The difference between the culture back then to now is they had a few more pirates running around back then, you know. They had gold pieces with them instead of 9mm. But I think we're going to be all right. I think the culture's here. I mean, just walk around the city and you see it. You know, it's here. It's in this room. It's down the street. It's on Magazine Street. Le Bon Temps Roulé, you know. I mean, it's everywhere. It's just in smaller concentrations right now. I still saw Mardi Gras Indians. In fact, I was talking to 2 of them that they used their costume from prior years that was somewhere where it was high and dry on display because the ones that were putting together for this year got toasted. But I think it's. I mean, you can't kill New Orleans. I think it's going to be all right. The music's here. We just got to keep our musicians here, give them work because you know can't have New Orleans without musicians, and the ballrooms won't fill up if they're not there.
Yeah, it's real key. I've been volunteering with the New Orleans Musicians Clinic, and they've been paying musicians for gigs around the city because a lot of the venues are unable to pay what they normally would. And so the Musicians Clinic is sort of filling in that spot by helping subsidize those gigs. And so it's given musicians a chance to really come out and do their thing and still have a viable economic source here in the city. But one thing I will say is before the storm, I was pretty actively involved going to second lines. It's a long tradition here in the city, and my former roommate was a member of a social aid and pleasure club. And that aspect of culture, I really feel the absence of individuals. Many of the people that were part of that culture have not returned to the city, and those normal every Sunday afternoon events are not happening right now. And it's a sad loss, and it's still strongly felt. So that remains to be seen how that'll return.
They've had a few second lines, you know. Hopefully they won't run them off because of the gunshots. But, one thing you don't see anymore, which I kind of miss, I thought it was typically New Orleans, and you see it in Chicago, New York, but the old guys sitting on a neutral ground playing dominoes.
Yeah.
Can't really do that anymore, I guess, unless, you get, with the wind blows, blowing mold all over your sheetrock dust, but that's kind of one of the things, I miss seeing. The domino and card players, like up on Earhart Expressway.
Yeah.
They were out there every day barbecuing it. Man, it was so set up, they had barbecue pits on a neutral ground, Median.
I think the culture is going to come back. I mean, the people are resilient, and New Orleans has a unique flavor unlike anywhere else. And the food, the music, certainly Katrina changed and affected everyone who has anything to do with this city, and will always be a part of his or her memory, and that certainly changes the culture, and it will have an effect on it. I mean, if anyone was here for Mardi Gras, all the parades had very satirical flavor in terms of response to Katrina and poking fun at this and poking fun at that, but fundamentally, it was back. I mean, the New Orleans traditions are back, and Katrina will always be in people's minds, but people want to be here, and they're going to continue their way of life.
It just gives us something else to talk about rather than Governor Edwards. They got old.
He is funny.
I think that the culture that I'm familiar with, which is I went to a private grade school in Mid-City, and I went to a public high school, a really good public high school in the lakefront area next to UNO's campus. And I feel like like that culture is going to be okay. I mean, that's what I know. I personally don't feel threatened. There are a lot of other Filipinos on the West Bank. I don't feel threatened, but I don't know if it's fair for me to speak on behalf of other culture, because personally, while I've been here all my life, I don't know if I would know what was missing. And I think that's an uncomfortable position for me to be in, because I'm unsure of what needs my help in terms of, bringing the culture back.
Great. At this point, we'd like to open it up to your questions. So if you would like to proceed to the front. There's microphones located at the front if you'd like to proceed down.
You mentioned the satirical thing, and I'm with Harvard's Habitat that's here, and we were down at Bourbon Street today. And, we saw all those T-shirts that kind of are very, very satirical. Like, for instance, the FEMA one that says, FEMA's evacuation plan, run, mother effer, run. And while I recognize the satirical nature of them, I was way too uncomfortable to buy one. And, as I'm from New York City, and if after September 11th someone had printed a T-shirt that kind of poked fun at the NYPD for not having its radios on the right frequency, I would have been really upset about that. I just wanted to see how you guys felt as native citizens.
Personally, I love the FEMA shirts. I called them FEMA Nazis last time, and I'll say it again if I have to. They did not have their act together. You poke fun at FEMA all you want. It doesn't offend me.
I feel like that's a pretty accepted thing. I mean, NYPD is one thing. You're going to have people who say that they did heroic things, and not that there aren't people in FEMA who are doing good work. I talked to a few who they were equally as frustrated with their coworkers and how they weren't able to do anything because they're not even listening to what I'm doing here on the ground. But I think that anything poking fun at FEMA is actually just kind of a joke for most people.
Yeah, it's not the workers. It was just everybody in charge that wasn't working.
Right.
Right. I think one aspect of New Orleans culture I can speak of is the way we deal with problems, and we like to celebrate kind of our mistakes. I mean, we had our carnival season, so I mean we love to poke fun at ourselves, and so I mean maybe I would have a hard time getting mad at you for wearing that T-shirt, because while I wouldn't buy one myself, I feel like that's accepted. I feel like that's normal to make fun of. It's a way of dealing with an issue.
I got a kick out of the ones you saw, the ones about the plasma TV.
Hi, my name's Shelley, and I'm from Linfield College. We have a group here. I'm from Oregon, and we were down in St. Bernard's Parish today, and we heard a little bit about the trash, but Brian, could you expand on that? I was just confused about the whole issue with that.
Yeah, apparently the companies that had the contracts to load up the trash and bring it to the temporary facilities, landfills, weren't getting their money. And from what I was told from Tommy Stone, who's got some inside scoop on it, he's the fire chief out there, good friend of mine, the money was given to St. Bernard to pay these contractors. The contractors paid St. Bernard out of the special account that the funds never got put into, so these contractors were getting checks that were no good. So they just stopped hauling trash. Junior Rodriguez supposedly got it all squared up, talked to FEMA, talked to this one, that one, the other one, and he says, yeah, it's all supposed to be happening soon, but they're not going to start picking trash up until the check's clear and until they have the money. I think it was 3 weeks ago, and you could drive down almost every street somewhere and get aggravated. You got to turn around. They blocked off, because they clean up in front of somebody's house. And then the next day they clean it up 3 doors down. And then this guy come back on the weekend and they come back and clean it up. They were actually doing a pretty good job out there. I put trash out in front of my house, and next day it was gone. But I think so many people didn't realize the trash wasn't getting picked up for a week and a half, 2 weeks, because you get so used to looking at trash all day long, But then they started realizing, I think what caught some people's attentions, other than, the council members out there, was no streets were blocked off. You could drive, the only streets were blocked off were from the house that sat down in the middle of the street. But supposedly they have it squared away, but I haven't seen anybody hauling trash other than, the guys riding around picking up the washing machines and dryers for scrap, lawnmowers.
Hi, my name's Luke. I'm from the Harvard Habitat Trip. I was hoping you could speak a bit to the grand visions that have been proposed by a lot of our national leaders. I know, like in the press immediately following Katrina, there was a lot of talk about conservatives making it their ground for a lot of experimental projects. There was a lot of talk about the end of housing projects. It seems like everyone has made, or did at least at first, make New Orleans into like the the vision of the future. And I was wondering, like, one, if you thought that their visions were in any way an accurate representation of what people in New Orleans wanted for their city in the future, and two, if any of those grand visions you thought might come to pass, or if people have basically given up those big hopes for the future.
I guess in terms of the role of like large-scale planned urban development, in the New Orleans area, there's like the story of the St. Thomas housing projects, and when that got torn down with a promise to the residents that a large percentage, around 60, would be able to move back into a mixed income neighborhood. What happened with that is they put a Walmart there, and a bunch of the low income housing was more for elderly people, not so much for families like had been promised. To date, I think 2.5 or maybe 5% of the original residents had come back. The government has lost track of where the original residents are, and I don't think is intent on finding them. So in terms of what's already been happened, and when we moved a bunch of people at once, it didn't work out so well. But we need to do something right away, and housing is a big issue. But I really do wonder what the unforeseen consequences of a large-scale urban development program would be.
I was doing a marketing research with a friend of mine for a business in St. Bernard Parish, and 72 residents in Village Square neighborhood were from St. Thomas. And the way we found out was through the police reports, because they hadn't changed their driver's license. The address was still coming up. But you're right. The government lost track of a lot of them. Why? I'm not going to go there. But from every plan I've seen, there's a little bit of every plan that I like, But on every plan I've seen, there was a lot of bit that I don't like. And it's because it's not keeping to the New Orleans pizzazz. It's just, as far as rebuilding, fix our levees. Give us money, fix our levees, make them to where we can do what we want to do.
Trust
Let
us.
Trust us. It's worked for the last 400 or 500 years down here.
I feel like that's the biggest issue. People elsewhere want to say that it was local, it was state officials, we have a history of corruption, we can't handle our own problems. And so let's come up with these grandiose ideas and put New Orleans in a petri dish and see if it works. Some big idea. Again, some of the ideas are good, and there are things that need to change. The housing projects were, I guess, hotbeds for crime and poverty, and something needed to change. And education is awful, and so any changes there, something needed to be done. But whether it's just like hey, let's make this. I was reading one senator who had said this is, in terms of the charter schools, it's going to be a great opportunity for charter schools to have a full city where it's all charter schools, and we're going to see whether that works or not. And in that case, I'm kind of like, well, anything's better than the previous system. So whether you like charter schools or not, it's like something needed to change, and the old system wasn't working.
Yeah, but that's the one thing we don't need to play with. The school is a school system.
Right.
Let's gamble on that.
Right.
Hey, my name is Kenny. I'm from Stanford, and I was wondering, I actually have like kind of two completely different type questions. One, do you feel that anybody's taking responsibility for the things that actually happened? Because when I look in the news, I see lots of like you said, local people say state, state people say local, they both say federal, federal both says state and local, and then like,
well said.
and so then like there's this vacuum of it's claiming responsibility, and then you have an election coming up, and like is there confidence that, I mean, like if Nagin wins, Nagin was here, and like there's lots of, he was here when the thing went down, and I guess Landrew, he was like lieutenant governor, and so it's kind of like just shuffling the same people around. So you think maybe that's why a lot of people aren't coming back, because it's like the same characters who don't take responsibility are going to be back? And then two, secondly, like on a whole different front, when we go back to California, Boston, Oregon, wherever, what should we do to like what should we do? I mean, I'm here for a week, I'm going to work hard, whatever, but like what should I do after this? Because, what do people from New Orleans want us to do?
Well, Louisiana's always had the best politicians money can buy. I doubt anybody's going to accept any responsibility for anything. You can take the rest.
Do you have something? There's no way to follow that in terms of the politics. The election's going to be really interesting. There's going to be racial, social, class, Katrina response. Everything is pretty much going to boil down. Everyone's going to point fingers. It's going to be a pretty dirty campaign, I would think. And no, I haven't seen anyone take responsibility. I feel like everyone has said, my biggest problem was trusting so-and-so to do their job. Well, that's not really taking responsibility as far as I'm concerned. In terms of what everyone can do, I think, again, it's one of these, don't forget about New Orleans. And if you guys can, someone was from the Harvard paper, be writing stories, raising money, just raising awareness about, listen, it's not over. And everyone in New Orleans is worried because hurricane season starts June 1. And we're not sure the levees are ready. They say they are, but some external people say they're not. So we continue to work. There's people who are putting in a lot of hard work and doing the things it's going to need to bring this community back. And there are a lot of worthy organizations. Someone was from Habitat. They're obviously doing great work. Selfishly, donate to our cause. Website's in your brochure. No, but seriously, just keep New Orleans in your thoughts. This rebuilding is going to be a major issue, and come back and join us again, because that's what's going to bring people back, is seeing New Orleans strong again.
What I would like, I guess this can integrate my answers or something. What I would like is for you guys to go back to your hometowns and think about, the lessons that we will have learned from New Orleans, like what happens in a disaster, how safe are we? What is the role of how quickly do you expect your government to take care of you in the event of an earthquake or a forest fire or a tornado or a hurricane or God forbid, like a terrorist attack or something? Like, what do you expect of them? And please voice your opinions on that. If anything, be more conscious about what you expect the government to do for you.
Yeah, it's okay to poke fun at us, man. That usually works for us,
As long as there's dollars behind it, that's fine.
Yeah, right. One of the things Nagin, what everybody's bashing Nagin about, his comment with the chocolate city and everything, he would have been a smart cookie if he would, in the very beginning, would have said, take a glass of white milk, put just a little bit of chocolate in it, and now you got chocolate milk. He'd have been smart by doing that. But he eventually came and tried using that at the end. But, I think that was the only responsibility that was claimed out of anybody, anything, was he said, yeah, I said it.
Yes.
Yeah, go back and tell him, we could use a little chocolate down here, a little milk, a little sugar, whatever, honey.
Yeah, that is a very good speech, by the way, if you read the whole beginning of it. I encourage everybody to read that whole speech.
What speech is that?
It's the Chocolate City speech. You can
Martin
Google it.
It was on Martin Luther.
Yeah.
Rare May Nagin, Martin Luther King Day, gave a speech, talked about why Katrina happened and what the city's looking like. He was making an appeal to people who in other cities who've been displaced, and it's been very controversial, to say the least.
Hi, my name is Emily. I'm from UC Berkeley, so some real hippies if you want to talk to them.
Jimi Hendrix land.
I was just wondering, we were in the Alamo facility picking up our cars a couple days ago, and we saw an advertisement for a post-Katrina tour that costs a mere $38 a person. And this is kind of in light of what you guys were talking about with exploitation, and I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on that because it really outraged me and my entire group. And if you feel, I know you guys were talking about a change in attitude and how that doesn't really reflect the new sense of unity, and I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on that.
They give $3 to charity, so that's. No.
Yeah, if the money goes to charity, if not, I've taken so many people on tours and didn't even charge them gas money. But yeah, if they, the way I see it, if they're making money off of showing New Orleans, they shouldn't be making money. Okay, put fuel in the vehicle, fill it with diesel, pay the guy that's driving it, and then send the money back to us. Because it's a good thing. It's letting people see what really. Everybody I've noticed seen it for the first time. People came down from Mardi Gras, and it's like, my God, doesn't look anything like it looks on TV. Yeah. So it's a good thing that they driving people around and showing this to them. Let them exploit it.
People have a lot of opinions before they come here as to what should New Orleans do and how should we rebuild. And I think coming here and seeing it can often really change your opinion about where we're going. And so I think there's sort of a dual mentality about the disaster tours. We need people to see it, but there is that feeling of exploitation sometimes. So I think done in the right context with, telling people to go back and share your stories and send money to charity, it can be a powerful tool.
I mean, that gives you an opportunity to see things that you won't see on TV. Like they'll show people moving trash out to the front of the house, but they don't show where the person stops and he just kind of looks at something and, reminisces for a minute. That's where you see the pain. It's like I saw this little cartoon. It's this guy and his wife, and they were throwing stuff out in front of the house. And he's like, Emily, I finally got you to clean out your junk room. I'm so glad. And she goes, yeah, you cleaned out your area too. Then at nighttime, you see him out there with flashlights looking at the trash.
H-E.
Hey there. Questions primarily directed towards Jay. I'm interested in the Community Action Program. Mm-hmm. Especially in the wake of something like Hurricane Katrina, you have a lot of competing organizations with conflicting goals, especially concerning social justice issues. Your organization on campus seems to address a lot of highly politicized issues that could, encompass a wide array of approaches to all these social justice issues. Mm-hmm. How does one organization that covers such a wide array of issues yet keep the campus unified and all have the efforts towards serving unhoused persons or adult literacy? Like how do you keep those topics separate and keep them all going healthily under one umbrella?
I think it's just, part of it just comes for the respect for the human person and for the environment that we try and foster. An approach that we try and take is to be political, but try as hard as possible to not be partisan. We're not trying to take sides, but we do try and acknowledge the political repercussions of the actions and every non-action that we take, because every time you don't do something, that is in agreement with whatever's going on right now. And so that's an attitude that we try and take. One way we can foster communication and cooperation between the different projects that we have about 12 or 13 that are really active right now, is we have weekly meetings where everybody meets and shares their experiences, gives updates, and we foster a sense of community so that LUCAP, our umbrella organization, isn't just the sum of all the projects. It's something greater when it's like that synergy kind of thing when all of us come together. And it's been really successful for us. And I have to admit that there are some pockets on campus that don't agree with the way that we like to do things. But we are officially supported by the university, and we have overwhelming support from, because we encompass Habitat and hunger relief and all those kinds of things, and it's pretty hard to be against that or parts of that.
Great to hear. Thanks a lot.
I'm Tyrone Pilson from Tusculum College, and my question is, from a local point of view, do you think or know that the local or state government or even the Army Corps of Engineers knew about the levees not being up to par, and because that could have prevented this whole thing. So I want to know your opinion on it.
Yeah, I think last week, was it the professor that worked, he teaches here? Yeah, Corps engineers knew it wasn't right. People have been complaining for years, and levees need to go up. Yeah, it's local because local didn't get the funding from the government. They couldn't raise the money themselves to do it. In St. Bernard Parish, they had a levee board, you know. And I think what the levee board did was drive on top of the levee all day and run people off of it. So yeah, it's a lot of finger pointing there. State, federal, everybody's got to do something. I think now it's finally pay attention, you know, wake up. I think it woke a lot of people up.
Again, what is the role of government? Is it, a lot of times we make fun of our student governments on campus for being a popularity contest, and I think something that we have to consider that it's that way in the real grown-up world too, and that's something we need to avoid. We need to have experts on levee boards, not people running around just on the levee, which is what it was in like New Orleans, and I'm hearing St. Bernard Parish also.
Well, no, St. Bernard actually had engineers that have been crying for years. Man, we got to rebuild our levees. Right. They know about it. That's why they run people off of it. I was being pretty facetious. They don't like the guys who ride dirt bikes and motorcycles on it because it tears up the levee. It affects it. Don't get up there and drive your car. You know, New Orleans, they don't have a levee you can really drive on except the lakefront when you drive over to drop off the keg of beer for your party or whatever. But New Orleans, their levee board, they have what, a police levee district or whatever.
Yeah, that's part of the problem is that there's all these individual levee boards throughout the state. That's one of the things that's going to change now. They're going to unify all the levee boards.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're complaining about. Where'd he go? Oh, that's one of the things that like some of the government doesn't want to bring it all into one and have one levee board control, because then it takes something out of everybody's pocket. But, so that's one thing they are looking to do is having one levee board, a district, or whatever they're going to call it. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dee Dee from Harvard. I kind of had a question relating to the exploitation a little bit. You hear reports of contractors coming in and kind of either seizing land that's not theirs, or like the government giving contracts to like their buddies to come in and do stuff. How much of that do you see happening, and like how true is that?
I know that parts of City Park have been leased out to private corporations to house workers for the rebuilding of New Orleans. So you'll see like little tent cities of basically places where Mexicans are working to rebuild our city. They are charged $5 to take a shower. They aren't allowed to wash their to hang dry their clothes out during the day, because it makes it look like a real tent city. I think there are tents there. It's pretty evident that it's a tent city. But those things are happening. There's a group, I think it's the acronym that we're passing around in our lookout community is No Sewage. It's like New Orleans Students for Worker Justice. And a part of that was we tried to get people to go to that rally yesterday at Charity Hospital, because I heard of one time that there were a bunch of the migrant workers working on a house, and one of them fell down from a 2-story building, and the contractor that had hired them just zoomed off and never came back, and they never saw him again. And so those things are happening. Maybe they're not happening. Maybe because I'm mentioning them, it seems like they might be happening all the time. But I can at least say that the things that I've mentioned are true things, and that maybe they're surrounded by some other great stuff. But the things that I've mentioned are true.
Yeah, they got a lot of retailers that are leasing out their parking lots to the out-of-state contractors, and yeah, I know one contractor that bought like 17 pieces of property in St. Bernard Parish at $20,000 and $25,000 each. And he don't care who's going to live in it. All he wants to do is, go Section 8 with it, whatever guarantees his money. To him, he came down here to put some guys to work, and he's, seizing the moment of opportunity.
Hi, I'm Hezi from Harvard, and I'd just like to know who or what each of you is most angry with, or if anger is even an emotion right now, if it's something different.
I guess it's pretty obvious that I can be pretty angry, but I'm generally a really happy person. I think what might anger me the most, because what hits most at my emotional, is when, because I'm from New Orleans, when I have to convince my friends that I went to high school with that they should do some volunteer work and not just, like keep playing video games and stuff. I think that really irritates me when I'm, trying really hard to rebuild a city that I love, and my friends that are from New Orleans that I don't have to explain any of this shit to are just sitting around doing nothing, and that really irritates me. I'm also kind of irritated by, I guess, apathy and ignorance and all that other kind of stuff, but baby steps.
For me, it's the incompetence. Just bottom line, I can take it when people make mistakes. Everyone's human, but someone asks the question of who's taking accountability. No one's taking accountability because there was gross incompetence in the leadership across the board, which is infuriating.
Currently, it changes every week depending on who's blaming who. But right now, my anger lies with the Archdiocese, who announced 3 weeks ago they were closing St. Augustine Church, which is where our project is. And this is a church that has been up and running since September, right after the storm. Their pastor came back, and they have a long and beautiful tradition of this multicultural worship. And the closing of the church is as much a human and social justice issue as it is a religious issue. And so the closure is it's inconceivable and a real injustice. And if you're interested, we have a website as well at savestparish.org. We have a lot of information on there. So it's a real sad thing that in this time when so many people have lost their homes, we're now losing a spiritual and cultural home in Treme.
For me, one of the initial things of concern was initially after the storm, I assumed that I had lost everything in my apartment, but I really was wondering about our school, how much water we had on campus, if the school was okay, because all the images that we saw on television or the images that we heard about was about people's homes and about the city as a whole, but you didn't hear about any of the colleges at first, and I just really wondered about the condition that my university was in, because as a student, that played a major role in my future goals, and this being my senior year, it was very important for me to know what was going to happen.
Yeah, it's the media didn't know where your school was. Didn't know how to get to it. I'm serious. I had a guy offer us $25 to give him a boat ride to the nursing home, but he's 30 smart, relative friend of mine was also in there. But to give him a ride to the nursing home so he can go photograph the nursing home, I'm like, buddy, $35. It's a long trip. And I started to bring him in and leave him and turn around and come back out, but my better judgment said don't do it. I was more angry at FEMA. Still angry at them because I can't get it out of my mind, the images I saw and who was in charge and who wasn't in charge. And if FEMA is a federal agency, why do we take a state agency that's governed by the federal government but put them in charge of the Coast Guard? When I see Coast Guard taking orders from Louisiana National Wildlife, I see a big problem with that.
Hi, I'm Deepak from Harvard Habitat, and well, from the discussion we've had today, I gather that there's two aspects of the rebuilding. One's more of a tangible, building houses, getting the physical infrastructure back, and there's also we were talking about wages and jobs, and another reason why people aren't coming back, and that's more of an intangible effect. And student activism obviously plays a huge role in the physical rebuilding, right, of the city. But what role do you guys see students playing in the other end, in the intangibles, where it seems like for such a magnitude of change, only the government can play a role? How do you see students effecting change in that aspect of reconstruction of the city?
several Loyola students sit in on unmet needs committees in various neighborhoods and communities to give a student's voice to the rebuilding effort and in like the tangibles and for the tangibles. And I guess we use, what little education we've got from our 3 or 4 years of schooling to provide another perspective. And I think that helps. We bring that information back to our meetings, and that we use that information to guide how we do the tangible work. And so it's kind of a cycle, and I think we benefit from attending those committee meetings.
I would think that they're sort of interconnected. The tangibles that you're talking about are actually going to lead to a lot of the intangibles. If you're talking about building homes, that's going to bring workers back, which is going to help with a lot of the rebuilding. Same with building schools, helping out with schools. That's going to bring a lot of people back, fueling the education of the city, which ends up creating a more fluid economy, a dynamic economy. In terms of advocacy and that sort of thing, which I think is also something you're talking about, students have an incredible voice, which I think is often underutilized. And I think that if you write your congressman, but honestly, if you take up the cause and kind of research the background, I've had plenty of people who the only way they've gotten around FEMA is by writing their congressman or writing their senator. And that was the only way they were denied from FEMA assistance, denied, and then, something got slipped through because XYZ senator's staff put it through. So if there's something you feel passionate about, whether it's education, housing, whatever it is, that can be something that if you are taking up that cause and raising awareness, I think that is instrumental.
Yeah, pay attention, educate your buddies, you know. Any educators, any education majors in there? Come teach in New Orleans. At least wait for a spot to open.
Yeah, I'd really like it if students came to our schools, if students came to Tulane and Xavier and Dillard and Loyola, and not just for spring break, but to actually, see what it's like to be here for 4 years. I really think that would help a whole lot.
Okay, hi, my name's Jessica. I'm from UC Berkeley as well. Okay, so I have a question. Like, a lot of it, like, I know with the prison systems, like, I just heard a lot of stories about, like, guards leaving and a lot of prisoners staying in there. And, like, I'm just wondering, like, what is being done with, like, people who were there or, like, their families, like, what's happening? Because I think, like, I don't hear a lot about that issue.
I don't know a lot about the continual prisoners. There was an article in a local paper a couple weeks ago about how right now the public justice system, the public defenders have been, there were 45 pre-Katrina and they fired 39 of them, so now there are 6 left. So they don't have enough people to represent the people in the city. So there was a judge, he subpoenaed the mayor and the governor saying, if you don't come up with some money to pay for these public defenders, I'm going to release 4,500 people who've been charged with felonies in the city because we can't charge them, and this is a breach of their constitutional right. I'm going to release them if you can't come up with the money. So I don't know that anything has come out from that yet, but certainly there are. The issues just, they go on and on and on, and if you buy a local paper, the Times-Picayune, or follow it in your local town, you can read the entire paper online at NOLA.com. The issues, they never stop. Everything is affected. So, but I don't know how that ended up turning out, and I don't know what.
A lot of them went to hunts. The guy that works for me was with me for 5 years. He was driving a van, not my van, but he was driving a van right on Canal Street, and he hit somebody, a pedestrian, a FEMA. It's no lie, it's the truth, okay? Because he had 2 beers, they never gave him any kind of sobriety test or anything. They packed him up, took him to jail. He ended up in Hunts. 3 months, no phone calls. He got out of there, no paperwork, nothing. He thought for sure they had him for DWI, DUI, something. The only thing he didn't have was proof of his auto insurance. So I took him across the lake last week just for shits and giggles and told him, man, go in there and, give me your driver's license number and see what they say. Did you turn in your license plate for your 1994 Ford pickup truck? I said, no, I got it at the house. It went underwater. I let the junkyard take it away. Turn it in, get a driver's license. So he got his ID because he didn't have the license plate. No record of it. No record of him getting arrested. I guess he's lucky, but 3 months, I couldn't find him. His father couldn't find him. His brother couldn't find him. His aunt lives right there in the Bywater. Everybody's looking for him. Nobody knew where he was. A lot of people disappeared. But they took, he said there was like about 15 people in his little cell block area that were from New Orleans. When they moved the prisoners, but those were the lucky ones because they were accounted for.
Right.
You know, the ones that went to jail, the people that went to jails, once the prison was moved, they were SOL.
I'm Brandon Cox with Tusculum College. My question is actually about faculty with the education. Is there enough? Is it getting better? Or is more needed as far as the faculty aspect of education?
You're talking teachers in public schools or faculty of our universities or what?
Public schools mainly.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Okay. I mean, from what I've seen, with this new charter school model, every school is allowed to hire and fire independently of the teachers union. So there's been a lot of questions and a lot of debate between now that the teachers union of New Orleans has pretty much been depleted and has no power because every school has the right to hire and fire. There are enough teachers right now, and the problem is that actually a vast majority of those teachers got laid off. There were about 3 weeks ago they confirmed that 6,000 public school teachers were laid off. So there are enough teachers right now for the amount of schools. Again, there's only 21 schools open in the city, so there are enough teachers right now. But as more and more students come back and more schools open, it's going to be one of those things in terms of accountability and improving public education. We need to make sure that we have strong teachers. So,
and the surrounding parishes like Jefferson Parish, they're complaining because they can't actually hire more teachers when they need them because the schools are so packed with displaced students. But then again, you hire teachers, they don't have the room, the facilities to hold these classes. So that's another problem. I think a lot of the teachers that were laid off either found work somewhere else or are still looking for work. Some of them are probably ready to retire anyway. But yeah, they will be needing teachers. Some good, strong ones. I would say the better the teacher, the quicker they get hired.
Hi, my name is Kimberly from Berkeley. My question is, Katrina brought out a lot of the socioeconomic situations in New Orleans, especially seen in which areas were hit the hardest with the levees as far as where the levees are actually placed. In your opinion, should the socioeconomic situation change? Like, I understand that a lot of people are coming back and the culture and family is bringing them back, but why should they come back to the same situation as far as like where they're living and like how much they're making and how they're being treated? So what advocacy efforts have been made in this area? Though I understand that we need workers to come back and that's the way that you rebuild a city, but what about the conditions that they'll be living in and all that stuff?
Well, I don't. Where to begin? Where could we start with that? Do we want to discuss?
I mean,
that's a huge question.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like if somebody wants to come back, then the government should help them come back. But if they want to stay where they are somewhere else, then the government should help them do that. I think the problem is that in a lot of areas, some people would prefer that others don't come back. Like, there's a community center called Hope House down by the St. Thomas Projects, and it's perfectly fine, it's structurally sound, but that building was targeted for demolition. And why? I mean, that's some really interesting stuff that goes on. A lot of community organizers are getting targeted. There's a conscious effort to get certain groups and certain people out of the city. And I don't know if we can begin to answer that complicated question until we try and figure out who's trying to play those games. Anybody else have any input? Because I
just wanted to clarify that I think you said it earlier. A lot of the media has portrayed this as only the hardest hit or the lowest socioeconomic brackets were hit hardest by the levee failures, and that's not actually true. As Jay was saying, there's basically the two worst neighborhoods in Orleans are Ninth Ward and Lakeview, which are on very different ends of the socioeconomic spectrum. I just wanted to clarify that.
Right. But I mean, if you do overlay like the flood maps of where of like how much water a certain area got and basically how black a neighborhood is, it works out. It pretty much covers it, except for like exceptions in Lakeview and a couple other areas. The map pretty much coincides, and it's really freaky. And that makes sense if you consider like the development of New Orleans. I mean, higher elevation places were developed first, and then when they needed servants and stuff, they surrounded the nearby they worked in the nearby neighborhoods. And when new developments start up, like Lakeview, like areas in St. Bernard Parish, like in the lower Ninth Ward, certain groups got targeted to go there. And I mean, Katrina wasn't out to get certain groups of people, but it's going to affect people in really different ways. And I don't know exactly how that's going to play out yet.
Yeah, because the lower Ninth Ward was, even the upper Ninth Ward was mixed years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, I disagree. It wasn't
right.
It wasn't targeted for a black community. It used to be
and what built St. Bernard up were oil refineries in Kaiser.
Right.
You know, my father built his house down in St. Bernard Parish because he was the first electrician on Kaiser's site. He needed a place to live. He didn't want to have to travel back and forth.
The owner of the New Orleans Saints, he grew up in the lower Ninth Ward.
Right, right. You know, and it's like, I used to live on Congress when I was a kid after Betsy hit. So, I mean, it's actually higher than St. Bernard Parish. The lower Ninth Ward is higher. It just so happens that if you take a canal right there, that's already having water pushed up the Mystigo into the canal and then have an empty barge bang up against the levee and that water start flowing from the river, by God, it's going to float anything in its path away. Yeah. You know, and they had less water than I had by my house. You know, I mean, I was passing over automobiles with my boat, but not passing over the vans. When I was in St. Bernard Parish, I was passing over the top of the vans with a boat and not hitting them.
Yeah, I just want to add that many of the stories I hear at the pantry are, in spite of what people's harrowing circumstances are, this is home. New Orleans is their home, and that's the bottom line. I mean, what's to come back for? New Orleans. This is where generations of their families grew up and lived. And so at the end of the day, that's what people want, is to be home.
Yeah, if people in California can build houses when they have earthquakes and you know, I mean, hey, man, we can live here. We can be stupid if we want.
Yeah, sorry, Berkeley.
At this point, we would like to conclude our formal discussion, although we invite all of you to please join us for a reception to your left when you leave this auditorium, down the stairs. We've set up some food and refreshments. In conclusion, we would like to thank all of you for coming. We appreciate your insightful questions and your valuable hard work in our wonderful and beloved city.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.